In the gospel passage, Jesus sets out for Jerusalem, not for a religious festival or anything, but to die. He has accepted his fate, and he has warned his disciples that things won't end well in Jerusalem for them. But Scripture says they didn't understand what he was trying to tell them, and they were afraid to ask him about it. What they understood, though, was Jesus was turning out to be quite the powerful person as he rolled out one miracle after another, including the recent feeding of more than 5,000 people with just a couple fish and 5 loaves of bread. And what they also understood was that as his followers, they shared in his power, because just days earlier, Jesus had sent them out to the neighboring towns with the power to heal the sick and cast out demons. So in this morning's text, we find the disciples feeling a bit overconfident in their powers, not to mention arrogant and superior. Jesus had sent them to a Samaritan town to prepare for his arrival. But when the Samaritans learned that their town was a stopover for Jesus as he made his way to Jerusalem, they closed their shutters on their windows and pulled up the welcome mat. The gospel writer doesn't explain the reason for their behavior. Maybe it was because they wanted him to hang around for a while, not rush off to Jerusalem and perform some of the miracles they had been hearing so much about. Or maybe it was because of the grudge that stretched back hundreds of years between the Jews and the Samaritans. Or maybe when they heard he was on his way to Jerusalem, the site of the Jewish temple, they couldn't let go of the century-plus memory of when the high priest and prince of the Jews destroyed their own temple and Shechem when they refused to convert to Judaism. Or maybe it was a combination of reasons. But whatever the cause, the Samaritan citizens chose to put out a no vacancy sign, which didn't set well with James and John, a couple of Jesus' disciples. Their best solution, as they saw it, would be just to annihilate the Samaritans for their insult. Wouldn't fire from heaven be perfect just now? Fire from heaven. We could just call down fire from heaven and consume them. We could do that. Someone needs to teach them to fear God. Just say the word, Jesus. The 2 disciples had recently witnessed Jesus clothed in all his divine glory talking to Elijah, the greatest prophet of all time. So maybe they remembered how Elijah had called down fire from heaven twice. Once to kill 50 people, and another time to consume an offering to an idol god. Or maybe they remembered the ancient story of the 2 angels who announced that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed by fire from heaven because of their sin of inhospitality to strangers. And maybe James and John, in all their lofty arrogance, saw themselves among the ranks of prophets and angels. But Jesus would have none of it. In fact, Scripture says he spoke sternly to them. James and John no doubt felt justified in their call for fiery destruction, just like the people who populate the comments section of so many sites on the web, and just like the people who lend their anger to the current January 6th committee hearings, and just like those of us who oppose the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and those on both sides of the debate over gun control, and I could go on and on and on, couldn't I? Richard Swanson reminds his readers that anger unites us. He writes, "There is always an us, and there is always a them, and it is holy anger that unites us against them. We appear to have come to a point," he says, "where people are willing to burn down the world rather than compromise, cooperate, or consider other courses of action." The problem is that our reaction to those who call down fire depends on which side we are on. When one of them calls down fire, he writes, we call them out for their obviously dangerous extremism. We are correct to do so. But we are not so clear about what to do when it is one of us calling down fire. Swanson clarifies his point by writing, "We cannot be casual about calling down fire. If we are just searching for a vigorous metaphor, leave the fire out of it. It is a death threat, and death threats are not metaphors." The Jewish Talmud tells a story about the escape of the Jews across the Red Sea. How Pharaoh's army pursued the Israelites as they made their way across dry land with a wall of water on either side of them. How in their pursuit, the Egyptians' chariot wheels became clogged, and with the return of the water, Pharaoh and his army were destroyed. And how on seeing the drowning Egyptians, God's angels were about to break into song when God silenced them, declaring, "How dare you sing for joy when my creatures are dying?" Toward the conclusion of Swanson's blog post, he writes, "We have a responsibility to pay attention to what anger is doing to us all. This responsibility is paired with our responsibility to make things change. And that's where I have trouble. And from what I can see, I'm not the only one. Somehow, I've got to learn how to stay focused on issues of justice and liberty without allowing my anger at injustice and oppression to consume me. And for me, it's a constant tug of war between the two. Sometimes I wish for the assassination of Putin, telling myself that it would solve a lot of problems. And after Friday's Supreme Court decision, there are probably a lot of folks who wish for the same thing to happen to some of the Supreme Court justices. But when we do, we are no better than the Texas pastor that claims all gays are pedophiles and should be lined up against the wall and shot in the back of the head. Each of us have casually called for the extermination of another human being. That's where anger will lead us when it's left unchecked. Every single time. Paul spoke words of wisdom when he warned the Galatian church, saying, "If you bite and devour each other, be careful that you don't get eaten up by each other." Sometimes I allow what I call justifiable anger to lead me down the path of demonizing my opponents. And that's unacceptable. But that doesn't mean I should ignore injustice when it occurs. I believe God calls us to make the world a better place. I embrace the Jewish concept of tikkun olam, which refers to various forms of action intended to repair and improve the world, including the pursuit of social justice. That includes racial justice, environmental justice, reproductive justice, economic justice, immigration justice, and justice for the LGBTQIA community. I think the lesson I need to learn is to pursue what is good and right and true without letting my opponents distract me with their extremist polar opposite opinions. Don't waste my time and my spiritual energy working out the details of how best to rain down fire from heaven upon them and their kind. Rather, I need to stay committed to the task that is before us. For you and me, that means using our voice and our vote to effect change for the better. It means educating ourselves about the issues and the candidates. It means not giving up hope and not forgetting that God always stands on the side of those who are oppressed. And we must do the same. If not us, then whom? Amen.